Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu just wrapped up a searing address to the United Nations General Assembly, criticizing again the Iran nuclear agreement and Palestinian leader Mahmoud Abbas.
Unfortunately, President Abbas said yesterday that he is not prepared to do this. Well, I hope he changes his mind, because I remain committed to a vision of 2 states for 2 peoples, in which a demilitarized Palestinian state recognizes the Jewish state.
We go now to Palestinian human rights lawyer Noura Erakat, who is joining us from Washington, D.C. She is assistant professor at George Mason University. Let me read for you another quote from Netanyahu. He said, quote, "I'm prepared to immediately resume direct negotiations with Palestinians without any preconditions." And then he went on to say that yesterday, Abbas said he wasn't willing to negotiate. And what are you making of Netanyahu's response to Abbas's decision to declare the Oslo Accord null and void?
I think that we should call it out for what it is. It's a repeat of now 2 decades and some of the same talking points of not having a partner for peace, of willing to sit down without preconditions, and simultaneous torpedoing the 2-state solution, the peace process, and expanding Israel's settler colonial jurisdiction across the West Bank and its continuous removal of Palestinians, even within Israel. So when he says that they're willing to sit without preconditions, that's basically saying we're willing to continue talking and eating donuts and drinking tea with one another so long as we don't have to build our settlements, have to stop building our settlements. Israeli settlements now cover 42% of the West Bank, and Area C, approximately 62% of the West Bank, is what Israeli parliamentarians are proposing to annex unilaterally into Israel outside of the peace process. And the reason that Israel can do this, and the reason that Netanyahu can get up and pretend to be the victim in the midst of all this, is because of absolute impunity provided by the United States, its unequivocal financial, diplomatic, and military support.
So tell me this, when Abbas says the Oslo Accord is null and void, that he now wants Israel to take responsibility for security and other services, is Netanyahu likely to do that? What can Abbas do to make Israel recognize Abbas's decision?
We should be really careful that Abbas's decision doesn't have any effect. The Palestinian Authority is not going to dissolve. That would be in the worst interest of the United States as well as Israel. Right now, the Palestinian Authority is engaging in security coordination with Israeli police security forces. The international community is footing the bill for the policing of Palestinians without any obligations of Israel as an occupying power, which remains in effective control of the territories. And so what Abbas should do is actually annul Oslo Accords, which are very counterproductive and have led to this status quo. What he won't do is exactly that. The speech yesterday was intended as a symbolic gesture that if the U.S. does not pressure Israel to return to the negotiating tables based on UN Security Council's resolutions 242, 338, and other international law, that's the effective status quo. We're going to have to see it to believe it, and that would first and foremost mean the end of security coordination with Israeli security forces, which is very unlikely to happen. Both Israel and the U.S. would oppose that immediately.
Well, may I just ask you this, because we heard it earlier today. One of our analysts suggested that giving all of the authority over to Israel might force Netanyahu to come to the table, because then he'll have all the responsibility. Is there not an argument to be made that since Netanyahu won't abide by the agreement, that he should be responsible for taking care of things on the West Bank, which he's not now?
No, I'm saying exactly that. I wish that Abbas would actually make a meaningful gesture to annul Oslo and return full control of the West Bank to the occupying power so that they can abide by their duties and obligations and not have this wiggle room to pretend like they're engaged in a peace process, and that the Palestinian jurisdiction over separated statelets, over 6% of the occupied territories, is tantamount to having a government and being responsible for all the security therein. We need to remove the farcical nature of this conflict as one between 2 two equal parties and return it, at least for those who don't have to endure the structural violence of settler colonialism, return it to what it actually is, which is a settler colonial condition that continues to expand without accountability and results in daily violence against Palestinian bodies and people.
But wouldn't that require the dissolution of the Palestinian Authority if that were to legally happen?
And that is what should have happened a long time ago. The Palestinian Authority at this point is a proxy authority for Israel's occupation at the expense of the international community. This should be Israel's responsibility. They should pay for it, and they should bear responsibility for it. And when it becomes too costly and too much responsibility, maybe that will impose the pressure on Israel to actually end its occupation rather than perpetuate it in order to expand its settler colonial jurisdiction, which now it can do with no accountability and at no cost to itself. We are incentivizing Israel's occupation. We are incentivizing Israeli violence because we are paying for it, and we are providing it. We are making it easier by giving Palestinians the authority to police themselves, and we're giving them the PR dream that they always wanted, to say that they're willing to negotiate and have to do nothing.
Thank you very much. Noura Erakat, the Palestinian human rights attorney, joining us. She's also a professor at George Mason University. We'll be back with more on Al Jazeera America.